I'm struggling with knowing how to start this episode on the Stepping into God's World podcast. I know its importance. I know how important it is for you to catch on to this, for you to get what I'm going to say to you. Now, here's the truth. There's an emptiness inside of every human being, every individual. There's a great chasm there, a need to be loved, to be wanted, to be special, to feel cared for, to feel protected. There's a deep need to know that you have value and purpose. You're not here for no reason at all. And that chasm, that void, is present within every human being. Now listen to me. That chasm that's there is a God void. And it doesn't matter whether you are Jewish or Muslim or Christian or you're an atheist. It's present in every human being. And really listen now. It isn't any amount of information or study or dedication that's going to fill that void. It takes the tangible presence of God. And without that presence of God, we as human beings, and it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not, without that tangible presence of God, we are unbelievably destructive. The truth is, even as a Christian, if God doesn't become tangible inside of you, if all it is knowledge you've gained, information you've gathered, maybe education, you've been to college, you've been to the university, you've been to seminary, you've gathered just miles upon miles of information. It's never enough to fill that void. And if the God void's not filled up with his tangible presence, we as human beings just naturally begin to look for something else, for some source that we believe has the greatest probability, the greatest possibility to fill that need. And in most of our lives, it's another human being, a husband or a wife. And so we think if I just find the right person, if somehow I just cross paths and find that right individual, that I won't feel empty anymore. I won't feel unwanted. I won't feel unneeded. I won't feel unloved anymore. So we search for that person. And often we find an individual, we're convinced, this is the one, this is the one. And it's true, Another human being can fill up part of that God void, but it's never quite enough. So we find the individual, we get married, and we realize that it's not enough, and we think the person that we married is just not trying hard enough. They need to change. They need to be different. They need to be more patient with us. They need to be kinder with us. They need to be gentler. They need to be more loving with us. It's never quite enough. And so often, even for a Christian, we end up leaving that relationship and looking for another, because we're sure there's someone out there who's going to make me feel needed and wanted and special and cared for and loved, and is going to fill up that God void. And then for many of us, we get married and realize that that's not quite enough to fill the void, and so we think if we just had children, if we had a family, so we have children, and for a while, that seems to fill up the God void, at least for a little bit. But it's never, once again, quite enough. So we look for a job or a career, and it's never quite enough. We look for then to gaining possessions, gaining financial security, and even if we reach that goal, it's never quite enough. There's still an emptiness, because everything that this world has to offer, every relationship you could ever have, is never going to be enough to fill the God void. Only God's presence, God's tangible presence can do that. And God, knowledge of God won't fill that void. Now, what happens if we never have God become tangible and God connect with us in that way? The reality is we continue to live this life at some level of emotional pain, struggling with depression and anxiety and fears and phobias and anger, struggling, thinking there's got to be something, or we're angry that nothing's quite filled the void. And because nothing can fill the void, the emotional pain is constant. It never ends. It never ends. And as human beings, we then begin to look for something, some source that can provide momentary relief. And when we find that source, some source that even though it won't last, it can take the pain away momentarily of feeling the emptiness of this God void. And when we find that source, we will have found an addiction. Maybe alcohol, maybe drugs. We may overeat to fill the void. It may be our cell phone, some social media site that we spend hours upon hours upon hours numbing the pain of emptiness. It may be video games that we play, again, hours upon hours. And does it work? Absolutely. It may be immorality. And even though it's wrong, at least momentarily, it takes away the emotional pain. Scripture says that sin has a pleasure for a season, but afterwards, it yields that pain of death, that inside we feel empty and lonely again. We become addicted because the source did provide momentary relief. So how then? How does God become tangible? Here's the answer. It is the presence of an attitude of desperation for God. In the moment that you're seeking Him, devoid of all other distractions of human need, of any desire or wish or relationships or goals or dreams, they're totally pushed over to one side so that all you're looking for is just God. And in that moment of time, if we seek just Him, then in that moment of time, a door will open to the supernatural presence of the tangible presence of God. And in that moment of time, that God void will become full. And you'll feel peace that passes all understanding, love that takes your fears away, joy that you could have never imagined. You'll be happier than you could have ever thought possible. And patience and kindness and gentleness and self-control will be there. All of those addictions will be gone immediately because of the tangible presence of God. Now, it's the distractions in this life that cause us to miss that presence of God. Remember, I've talked about it quite often. Jeremiah 29:13, God says, if you seek me, you'll find me. If you seek for me with all of your heart. Now, the reason for why this podcast is here, the reason why I'm coming to speak with you, to talk with you, episode after episode, is I want to help you find God in a tangible way, in a supernatural way, so that the presence of God and all that He is, love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and gentleness and faithfulness and self-control and righteousness, comes inside of you. And you're totally changed. Scripture says, a new creature, a new being. Yeah, you're so different when God becomes tangible. When God becomes tangible. Don't give up. Keep following. I promise I'll take you there. And remember, on this journey, you're never alone. Never without purpose or value. Never unloved. And I promise God's made you and fashioned you in a unique way for what he's calling you to do. You're who you are because of the artist who put you together. Come along with me. Let's fill that God void with the tangible presence of God. Hey viewers and listeners, this is Rod Pruitt. Want to help someone experience a tangible encounter with God? Then simply click on the like and subscribe buttons below. Yet more important, take the time and click on the share button to make sure your friends know about this intimate God relationship. That's all you have to do. Thanks for caring.